Hello, everybody. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. And thank you, Astrid. My name is Caspian. I am the hotline specialist for the Adult Literacy Hotline. And today I'm just going to be going over some of the basics of what is the Adult Literacy Hotline, how it can help assist in your program. And then Jenny is going to go ahead and do a deeper dive so you can make sure that your hotline page is up to date. Can we go to the next slide, please? We can do the next slide. I already covered that, I guess. Sorry, jumping ahead. All right, so the importance of the Adult Literacy Hotline. So, like I said, we help direct folks from all over the state of Minnesota to programs in their area. I recently actually did a big push, a mailing push to even libraries in far, far greater Minnesota. So we do have a far reach, and we've gotten a lot of folks reaching out from further out. So we help all over across the state, and we help people find things like English classes, GED, adult diploma. And when I can, I do try and help with any other support that they might need. We can help save you time by directing learners to you, but we can also help save you time if your hotline page is up to date and has the information that the learner needs. I can make sure to give that information to the learner. Next page, please. So the learners can get in touch. We do email, text, and phone. I don't know if this will be surprising to some folks. Some folks get surprised. Mostly we get text messages. That seems to be the preferred way that folks like to contact us. I think because Google Translate exists, it's easier to communicate through text instead of a call. But we do have translators available in over 200 languages. If folks want to call in, I can connect to a translator pretty quickly and we can chat that way too. We work Monday to Friday and we try and return calls within 24 hours. So, times like this, when I'm at a conference or doing something else, I will make sure to return any missed calls, emails, or texts within 24 hours. Next slide, please. So, in a typical call or email or text, I'm going to ask if they're interested in online or in person classes. Of course, the class subject that they're interested in. Sometimes we get callers who want to do GED, but they also want computer and maybe job skills. So I will try and find a program that meets everything that they're looking for. Oftentimes, people have one specific thing they're looking for. And in that case, I want to make sure that it's, online or in person, morning or evening, suits their work schedule and what their zip code is. The way that I can search is by the middle of the zip code to see which programs are the closest that suit what they're looking for. We provide 2 to 3 program options, contact information for the program, any registration details we see on the Adult Literacy Hotline program's subsite page, which Jenny will go into how to ensure yours has all the information that would be most helpful to give to learners. And then I often help folks figure out how to navigate public transit to be able to get to the location as well. Next slide, please. A nice thing that we offer is a page. It's kind of like a survey. It's on SurveyMonkey, where folks can go and request materials. So we have flyers available in 11 languages. We also have rack cards. We have business cards, pens. We have all sorts of things. If there's anything on this form if there's anything else that's not on the form that you'd be interested in, you can always email me directly at the hotline email or my personal, which is at the end of the slides. And I will talk you through what other options we have. We have post-it notes, all sorts of things. So if that's easy for you, if you see you get a lot of learners coming, looking for GED, and your program does not offer GED, you can hand them this flyer and I will help them find GED classes near them that suits their schedule, just to take a little bit off of your hands. Next slide, please. And then I have been doing the hotline newsletter. That has been really fun because I get to pull reports on what the latest trends have been on the hotline. One example, like I mentioned, where we've seen an increase in people reaching out from greater Minnesota. I've also seen a pretty decent increase in folks looking for GED rather than before that. I had a lot of folks looking for English. So I like to report on these trends in our hotline newsletter, let programs know what folks are asking for. It also helps remind you to keep your hotline subsite updated. Another thing that I like about doing this is it just creates that connection from me between the programs. So, you get the newsletter and it reminds you, oh, yeah, the hotline, we're trying to push this new GED class or this new career class, this niche class. We could use help. And I would love to send anyone that's in the area looking who's calling the hotline in your direction. Again, I love getting emails, so please feel free to email me if you have questions. I also can pull specific reports for your area. So if you want to see, in these zip codes, what most folks are calling the hotline and asking for because you're trying to determine what class subjects you want to add to your program, I would love to do that. I can pull that information for you, and it's really fun for me. So please don't hesitate to reach out. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to go ahead and pass things over to Jenny.
Okay, thank you, Caspian. Can you hear me?
Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming to this session about the hotline, and thank you for all that information about how you receive the calls and texts, because to me that is sort of like a mystery area, so I like to hear how that works on your end. So I'm going to be talking about the SiD. So the hotline is directly connected to the SiD data system and what you have in there. So that's what populates the results that people will find on the hotline. And I'm talking about the online hotline right now. We'll have a link to that in a sec. So we're going to talk about those public search options, what the people are searching for, how SiD sends the information that you have in SiD to the hotline, or what gets sent basically, and how to look and make sure that your information is current and up to date, any sort of troubleshooting you might need to do if you look at your info and it doesn't seem correct. And then a little bit, we're going to talk about how we do have an online registration option for students. It's kind of like an initial registration, and that is available kind of through the hotline, your hotline site. So that's why we have it during the hotline session. All right, so let's move on. So this is an image of the online hotline. So even Caspian, when they're answering the phone calls, they look at this online hotline, just like a potential student would. Um, and the link to the hotline is at hotline.mnabe.org. So you can go to the website and see this screen here. And if you notice on the bottom right-hand side of that hotline now, there's a nice little video that walks through how to use the hotline. So that's a new feature, somewhat new, which is pretty cool. So what a potential student or somebody who's helping a student, so Caspian or job counselors or who work with students to help them find classes, they might come to this site. They're going to type in this box, either their zip code or city, where they're looking for classes. And then this drop down has a distance that defaults to 5 miles, but you can expand that up to pretty far if a student is willing to and able to get far to take classes. There is the class subject area. So we have a handful of subject areas if they want to focus in on, say, English class or GED class, etc. The class times are kind of not generic, but more general, like morning, afternoon, evening, or weekend. What type of classes as far as in person or online. And then if there's other services that they're looking for, um, they can check on those. And then after they've filled out what they're searching for and then click search, or they can leave all of this blank. If they're like, I just want some classes, or they're very vague about what they're looking for, they can just put the city and the distance and click search. And then down below here, this list is going to list programs all around the state that will fit those criteria. So when you first go to this page, the Adult Literacy Hotline, this list down here is like all the ABE programs. You can scroll down, it's going to be really long. And once you do a search, it narrows that list down to the ones that fit the criteria of what the person is searching. Okay, so once they do that and do a search and they click on their program, the next screen is what they see when they click on the program that they're interested in. Okay, so it has a map right here. It has the name of the program, the address, phone number, the email for the contact person at that program, on the website. And then right here is a short description, and this is very specific about the hotline description, and I'll show you in SiD where you can enter that info or edit that info. And then it lists classes that you have at your program. I mentioned this if you were at the morning session. Even the name of the classes, it tells when they start, whether they're in person or online, days of the week, and then that those subject areas. So again, in a moment, we'll look at SiD, and there's an area where you can click off which content areas your classes have, and then the hotline will then use those in the search. So this particular class has a lot of content areas checked. But this search will be narrowed to what what the potential student has searched on the previous page. Okay, so that's what a person will see when they are looking for classes and looking at the hotline. And one little thing I want to point out is this button over here. It says Start Registration, and that is in reference to that online registration option that we have, and I'll talk about that at the end. Normally that is not there. So if you go look at your hotline site, you probably won't have that button unless you have turned on the online registration option. We'll get more into that later. Okay, so that screen that we just looked at, those couple of screens are what the public sees, what the hotline staff see, what a potential student sees when they're looking for classes. Now we're going to take a look at what you see in SiD and how that relates to what then appears on the hotline. Okay, so there's two main categories of information that get displayed on the hotline, and one is based on your subsites. Okay, so that's going to be this top screen, and we'll go into detail there. And a lot of the other information on the hotline is based on what you have as classes in your SiD. Okay. So to see this in SiD, when you're in SiD, you have all the, what do you call them? The tabs across the top. If you click on the hotline tab, you're going to see all your subsites. So this is Literacy Minnesota program. They have a site called Holy Rosary, a site called Litmin Satellite, and a little green dots will tell you that those are on and visible for the hotline. If it has a gray dot, that means it is not visible on the hotline, and we'll get into detail on why that might be. And then, of course, you're familiar with all your classes in the class screen in SiD. That's going to populate some of the stuff on the hotline. We'll go into more detail. Okay, so like I said, when you're in SiD and you're looking at the tabs across the top and you click Hotline, you're going to see your various sites. And again, the green dot signifies that the subsite is on. Okay. Now, if you were to create a brand new subsite in SiD, you have a new partner, you have a new building where you're having classes, and you create a new subsite in SiD, and you're going to start having classes. The subsites will default to being turned on for the hotline. If you want to turn off a hotline, well, I'll get to that in a second. The other thing that you'll see on the screen here is the hotline name. You have the option to kind of give a sort of nickname to your hotline sites, to your sites. And then the address. The address is super important because, as you can see, the hotline uses mapping to find sites that might be near a student. So of course it needs an address. Contact information is listed here as well. It's kind of blacked out for this presentation. Also, subsite, you must have classes currently or coming soon, like in the next 60 days. Otherwise, your subsite will not appear on the hotline. So in a second, I'll show you the screen where you can turn off your subsite if you don't want a subsite showing purposefully because you have a subsite designated just for your wait list or something. But another way that your subsite might not appear on the hotline is if you don't currently have classes. Now that's super rare. But occasionally over the summer, if you have a program where you don't have classes for an extended period of time, then if somebody's searching for a site, they might not find your site because if you don't have a classes coming up, this hotline's not going to display your subsite. But like I said, that's kind of rare because say you probably have classes until mid-June. If you don't have classes again until September, but if you put them in SiD, if you list them in SiD and you're raring to go, then within 60 days, then your site will appear on the hotline again, if that makes sense. So from this screen, you're in SiD, you're on your hotline tab and you're looking at your various sites. If you click on any one of those, you'll get to this next screen. And this is where you can edit some of your displaying information. Okay, this looks quite similar to that display that a potential student will see. It has the map over here that's based on your address. Um, like I said, you can make sort of an alternate name for your hotline. So if you have a building that you have in SiD, you have it listed as like Building A or something maybe generic that's like a school district building name, but the public knows it as something else, then you have the option to put that name of that subsite here for the public to see. I don't know how common that is, but all right. We also have this do not display on hotline checkbox. So like I said, a new subsite will default to being turned on. So this will be blank. But if you do have subsites, and I know programs have this, where, like I said, some programs create like a waitlist subsite where they're going to just track students. Or you might have a subsite that's a jail site and you don't want that to display to the public because that's not classes that are open to the public. Then you would check box this. And then on that previous screen, it would appear as gray down here. It's still a subsite that exists in your system, but it's just not displayed on the hotline. Okay. This other checkbox is if you want to turn on that online registration form that I mentioned. And then here's the description. So I mentioned that a bit on the view that a potential student or the hotline staff people see when they click on your site on the hotline. There's like a room for like a full paragraph description. So this is a place where people might put in maybe a little bit of info about what your registration process is like, or um, some sort of unique information that otherwise isn't sort of displayed on the hotline. You can include that here. You can come here, edit it at any time, scroll down and hit save. And then those other services that your programs are searchable by, if you remember on the hotline. So whether you provide childcare, all of these are toggled to default to no, I'm pretty sure. And so you have to toggle those on to yes if you do offer those types of services, and then they will be searchable by people who are doing a hotline search. Okay, I do see we had a question about deleting a subsite that are no longer used. And Mary answered that. There is a subsite section. You can give them hide dates. And there's a link to a help article about that. That is even beyond hotline. Like you're talking about, you used to have a subsite and you don't even have that subsite anymore. It's good to clean that out and turn those off because when you're making classes and you're toggling through subsites, you don't want old subsites on your list anymore. That's a good question. Okay, speaking of subsites, as you see on this hotline edit page, you don't have the address for the subsite. You can't edit it here. You don't have your contact info. That's because you have to go to the edit subsite info page. So you can click here and it'll bring you directly to it. But if you're familiar with SiD, you also know that if you go to the admin tab, there's a list of options and one of them is edit subsites. That's where you would create a new subsite or edit any of your current subsites. But if you're looking at your hotline page, it has a shortcut to bring you to that screen. So you would click there. Oh, I should point out that if you are here editing something, say you're editing the alternate name or you've edited the description, and then you click save, and then you go look at the hotline, you're like, did my change happen? Well, because this is the internet and a live system, it does take a little bit for your edits and updates to get out and percolate through and show up on the hotline. So it usually only takes like 10, 15 minutes, but we do tell people it can take up to an hour for any change you make here to appear out on the public hotline. So just keep that in mind. All right, so again, if we click this edit subsite info here at the end of this arrow, that is sort of a shortcut to the edit your subsite option, which you can also get to by clicking the admin tab and editing subsites. What that will bring you to is actually, I think, the screen that's sort of grayed out behind here. It's a list of all your subsites. And you're going to click on the one, or maybe it brings you directly to this edit page. So here you'll see the name of the subsite, the SiD name, not the little nickname if you wanted to adjust that. An abbreviation, the contact name. This is an area I think that people forget to update. now and then. So if you have a new staff person who's really going to be the contact for one of your subsites, it's easy to forget about updating that info here on the hotline. It is not top of mind, but that's why we like to do these sessions to remind people that you do have info out there that you're going to want to check now and then to make sure it's up to date. Um, and phone number for the contact person for this subsite, email address for the contact person for the subsite, and then the website. You put the website here. Um, one thing I like to point out is if your site has a website that you want to let people link to, um, when you edit this here, when you put the website here, you do not put HTTP. You just put like www, you know, stpaulschools.org or whatever the address is. You don't need the HTTP. Sort of a quirky little thing. Okay, so that's how you edit the sort of nuts and bolts on the subsite and what people will see when they go to the hotline and find your site. Okay, so that was all about subsites. And now I'm going to talk about classes. Oh, before I do that, I want to say real quick, Caspian did put in the chat. I'll add that the description is a really helpful thing for Caspian to use when referring folks to your program, particularly if you have registration details like open office hours. Yeah, so that information is very useful. And if you're not accepting students because you're full, that is useful for Caspian and other hotline folks to give that info to the students. Okay, so classes. So as you remember on the hotline, it will display, some basic info about all the classes that you have in SiD. So where does it get that info? Well, from your class information. So when you create a class, you have a screen that looks kind of like this. This here is your edit class screen. So if you look at a current class right now, so we're looking at a class called ESL 3. If you click the edit box, then this screen will pop open. And these options are basically the same options as what you get when you're creating a class. So you would fill out all your usual class information. And again, reminder, it's good to have class names that make sense. For a long time, we had a lot of programs that were kind of in the habit of just naming their classes like the teacher's name or afternoon, Joe's class or whatever. So it's good to have the classes have a title that makes sense to what is being taught in the class for people on the hotline coming to look for classes. Okay, but most importantly for the hotline is the information on the right hand of this class screen. And this is the same for a class when you're creating a brand new class as it is with when you're editing a current class. In the top, these are not, they don't have red boxes in SiD. This is just highlighted so you can see. First is the do not display on hotline option. So if you click that, then the class won't appear on the hotline. It won't be searchable. And we do, again, programs do this often for like waitlist classes, or say you have a specific class that's only for current students, like the example I've thought of before is maybe you have a writing class that's only for your already current GED students or something. Then you don't want that out there on the public to find. You can click that and it won't display on the hotline. And then the hotline content. So you're going to want to look at your classes and make sure you're checking off the content areas that are covered in that class so that if people do look for subject areas, they will find them. And then you can uncheck too. You can come here and uncheck and then click save. So you're going to just want to stay on top of whether your classes are accurately being displayed. And then Caspian says, please only select computer if it is a computer class or digital literacy class, not if you're using computers in your class. Yeah, and I wonder if we could even change that name so it doesn't just say computer, so it would say like computer skills or something.
Yeah,
That's something we
that's a
could
great
talk about.
idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, Note to self. Okay. So it's pretty straightforward, I think, how your class content um, appears then on the hotline. And then I have a little yellow notification to remind me to tell you DL classes, the ones where you're tracking students' proxy hours, those automatically will not appear on the hotline. And the reason for that is they can look kind of confusing on the hotline. Often we tell programs, if you're collecting proxy hour for a class, you want to put it in SiD with long chunks of time, like from 8 in the morning till 10 at night, because you might be once a month you're putting in like a chunk of hours. So that would look really weird in the hotline. So by default, DL classes are not on the hotline. And like the subsite info, if you update a class because you realize it didn't have the content or whatever, and you come and save, it'll take a few minutes, up to an hour, for that to then um, go out to the hotline. And speaking of looking at all your classes and whether they have all the correct content and whether they're displaying the way you hope they are displaying, we do have a report in SiD called the Class Information Report. So again, like everything else, the report location is if you're in SiD and you go look at the Reports tab, you scroll down to a section called Lists for Students and Classes. There's a report, I think it's at the end of that section, and it's called Class Information. And if you click on that report, it's going to run and it's going to default to today. So all your classes that are currently active as of today will appear on this report. So if you want to look at a wider span, if you want to look at your classes that are going to be active throughout the whole year, you're going to need to change the date range um, so that you want to see your future classes, current classes, et cetera, and click View Report again. And then you're going to see that it shows you all your classes and a bunch of information. And this report goes very far to the right. I have just kind of cut it off because it's too long, but because there's a lot of information. So it'll list each of your sites, or your main site, sorry, and then each subsite, and then whether that subsite is displayed on the hotline or not, based on you toggling that do not display or not. And then each of the classes at each of your sites. So this is our little example. We don't have very many classes at each site here. This is our fakey fake site. And it'll show you whether you have that class displayed on the hotline, yes or no, based on the toggle. Information about the class name, and then other information that isn't really specific to the hotline, but just good for you to get if you're ever looking for a bird's eye view of all the classes you have and all the information about your classes. So it lists whether it's a scheduled or a lab class, a contact hour, what DL program it's associated with if it has one, whether it's in-person, online, that class interaction option. Oh, I should point that out when you're editing classes, that class interaction, maybe we should highlight this for future, that in-person or online or asynchronous distance, that's going to feed into that search option that people have at the hotline, what kind of class type they're looking for, in person or. So it's important that you do select that. And you can see here, you can get a bird's eye view of all the ones and whether you have them tagged the way you want them to appear. Whether they're IET, workplace, it has a start date, end date, and then all the content areas. So those content areas, when you're creating a class or editing a class, whether you have them checked off or not, are listed here. So you can take a quick look and see, okay, do I have the math checked off for all my math classes, etc. Because you want people to be able to find classes based on their subject. Okay, so we're going to take a second to do an activity. And I always have a timer for the activity, but then I always talk through the whole thing. So I don't know. I might just admit that I do that. So I would like you all to open another browser or another tab in your browser and go to the actual hotline at Hotline. And Mary put the link in the chat again, so you can just click there. It should open another tab for you. Search for your site, either using your zip code or city, and if you are a program that has a couple different subsites, then go ahead and do this for a couple different your subsites. Click, after you've done the little search, click on it, and does your hotline, do the results look the way you think they should? Does it have your accurate address? Does it have, the correct contact info, etc.? So if anybody could please chime in and tell us how your site looks on the hotline. Does it look how you hoped it would? Do
Another
you see anything that needs to be updated? Sorry,
y-
go ahead, Caspian.
another good thing to do is just click through your website link and make sure that goes to the right page too.
Good point. Yes. Yeah, because website addresses change a lot too, and the last thing people are thinking about is going to update it here on your subsite.
Yes, there are definitely some broken page links that I have found, and it's
Okay,
good to
good
double
to
check
know.
those. Yeah.
Good to know. Okay, has anybody successfully found their site and how does it look? Don't be afraid to say, oh, we need to update something, or let us know if it looks the way you think it should and people can find what they need. Looks good. Metro North, Brooklyn Center, awesome. Okay. Oh, great. I mean, Michael said that some classes are showing up, but not all. So he's going to be editing them in SiD to make sure they show up. It's okay, says Sean. All right. Didn't have the website, but now you do. Ruth, now you have to wait for it to show up. Fair enough. Maybe check again in a couple minutes. I'm curious how I haven't, it doesn't usually take an hour. All right. IMN is looking good. Other programs looking good. Good. Looks good. Language, English Language Learning Center. Excellent. Oh, you got new phones. Oh my gosh. I think St. Paul School's got new phones too. So I don't know if that meant people got new numbers, but yeah, like I said, I know it's easy to forget that this is a place you want to update your phone number, address, all that stuff. But go ahead and do that now. Yeah. Or soon when you get the number. Excellent. Okay. Well, let's go on. So if you do go to your hotline and you can't figure out, well, it's not showing or a subsite's not showing or classes aren't, they're not appearing when I search for English classes or whatever. Well, now, having come to this session, you should have a good idea of how to troubleshoot that. But also, if you forget or if you're working with other staff, don't forget we have our help section in SiD. So anytime you're in SiD, those links across the top, there's a right link that says help, and that'll bring you to our help section. And you can search almost any question, just search in the search box and you'll find it. But we also have a whole section just about the hotline. And we have some Hotline 101 introduction stuff, how this all works. I think little videos, how-tos, some troubleshooting articles about why doesn't my subsite appear? Why aren't my classes appearing? So you can always go here. Generally think you can find the answer to your question in these articles, but if you can't, you can always email us as well. Um, so there's a link to this page that shows all the hotline related articles. And if all else fails, definitely shoot us an email at sidsupport@literacymn.org, which will be at the end. Because we pride ourselves in doing a pretty good job of getting back to people and helping out and figuring out. And if there's some kind of quirky mystery, we like to figure that out too. Okay, so now I'm going to talk quickly about the online registration option, which I referred to earlier. Um, if you remember, I'm going to uh, highlight this picture down here on the bottom right. I'm referring to when I mentioned that on the hotline, if you have a start registration button, that means you've turned on your online registration option. So here's how you would turn that on. Of course, you have to talk with as a program if you want to make available the online registration option for students. We have a couple programs that use this fairly regularly. Um, so in SiD, at that hotline tab that we looked at earlier, that screen where you can edit the name and you can edit your description, remember there was that little checkbox so you can check display the e-intake form. It's default, it's not checked. So if you want to turn it on, you have to check it. We do have a help article about this, and there's a link to that help article here, and Mary has put that in the chat as well. And what will happen when you check that off is a few things will all suddenly turn on, okay? The start registration button will appear. That'll now be on your hotline results page. So if a student's looking for your program, that'll now appear. Now again, it might take an hour for it to appear, but it will eventually appear. Also a little tip, this is a link. So you can click on that link or you can right click on this button right here and you can get the web address. So if you have a whole other website that you promote your program at or your school district website about your program, if you want people to link directly to the registration from your other website, you can find the link here, right click, grab that URL, and then you can paste that into any other website you have where you want to point people to this online registration option. Okay, so in addition to this suddenly appearing, this button appearing on your hotline results page, um, in SiD, on your side of things, you will now have a new button at the top. When you're in SiD and you see all those tabs across the top, you'll now have one that says e-intake. Okay, it won't be there if you don't have this turned on, and when you turn this on, it'll be there. So what that is where you're going to collect the results of people's online registration, and I'll show you a screenshot of that in a moment. But this that we're looking at right now is what a student will see when they go and click on that Start Registration button. It's going to step by step bring them through a registration process of the basic and simple information that is needed by you to create a SiD record for a student. Okay, it collects the required data elements. So the first screen will show them, you can see it over here on the left. It has your name, your program name at the top, and it has a pretty generic Tennyson warning page about that we collect this information, etc. Once they click accept and continue, it'll bring them through 4 simple screens. So the first one, ask name, gender, birthday, ethnicity, race. It does have country of birth and language. Those aren't required, but enough people do ask those questions that we included that on the intake. Um, and then they click next step and they'll get to the next step and it'll be address, phone, etc. Okay, so they go through a couple steps and then they will click submit on the last screen. And when a student does that, then you in SiD will get their results on your e-intake screen. Okay, so if you're in SiD, you will see, like I mentioned, this new tab across the top that doesn't appear if you have not turned this on. So each completed registration will generate a record here on this screen. And over on the left, there's this processed column. And if you've gone through, this is a screenshot of a program that does use this. And they've already processed, they've clicked on the student record and they've processed the student and either brought them into their SiD data or not. And then you can see these blank ones mean they have not processed that record yet. So you can click on one of these name rows. It has first name, last name, address, etc. If you click on that, it'll bring you to the next screen. I'll show you what that looks like. Um, but also, just wanted to let you know, we do have a link here for a help article about this page. All right, so the next screen looks like this, and I have a bunch of fake student info in here, so don't worry. This is the e-intake information screen, and it shows you what the student submitted, what they typed in as their name, address, etc., race, ethnicity, work status, etc. And you can see a couple buttons over here. This one says person search. So if you do intake for students, we have a process where you can search if you have a new student who comes to your program, you can do a person search to see if this student already exists in another ABE program in Minnesota. So when you get this online registration, it already plugs in little pieces of information from the student record, and you can click person search and it'll automatically run that person search for you. And you can find out, okay, this student's brand new to ABE. They don't exist anywhere. If that's true, then you click new student and it's going to pre-fill the intake with all this new student information and voila, you have a new student. If it does find a potential match in the person search, then you're going to have to go through that whole person search process, which is a whole different session. But if they already exist in the system, you might just want to pull over their existing record. I do have a question. How did you say we could insert our own registration link on the hotline display? No, you can't. Can you replace the SiD intake? I'm not sure I understand, Ruth. What I'm saying is you can find the link for a student, how they could get to the our SiD online registration. You can use that link and put that on your own website if you want them to use this online registration process. But if you have a different online registration process, then that would not go on our hotline. You could maybe put it in your description, if that's what you mean. Okay. And then if you do use this and you put the student and you plop them into your SiD data system, then you can mark as processed. And then if you go back to the screen, this will be check marked. So you'll know that you've already processed that record. Okay. And that is it for the hotline and how SiD connects to the hotline. If you have any questions, I know we answered a few questions throughout. And these are our emails on the screen, and Mary also included those in the chat. And Mary and I both check the SiD support at literacymn.org. Mary is most consistently the one taking those questions and replying to folks and getting answers. So if you have any questions, whether it's about Hotline or anything else, as you know, with SiD, we are happy to answer. Caspian, do you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think the description is the best place. If you have your own registration link that you want to add, that's the best place rather than replacing your website address because I will often use your website link to see how long your classes are, for example, because we only have where the class start time is. We don't have the whole length of the class. So I'll check your website for details like that. So if it goes automatically to a registration page, I kind of have to backtrack or try and find your original website. So putting it in the description would be the best. Other than that, I think we covered everything, but yeah, happy to answer any questions that anyone has.
Hmm. Ruth asked if there's a reason there's no end time for the classes displayed. I'm not sure that there is a reason except for maybe just space reasons, but I could look into that if you think that would be useful. I do want to say that the hotline, it does have a lot of good info and pretty detailed info, but students still are going to need to contact your program to see if it's a right fit or whatever, and they can get more detailed info. So, but that is a good question about including the end time of a class.
Yeah, and there are sometimes little finicky things for doing this search, and that's why I just tell folks like feel free if you have questions or if you want me to help someone find a program, that's what I'm here for. So it's not it's a great search engine and it works really well. And I kind of know all the finicky little things to help find the best information.
Well, yeah, and it's good to get information from you, Caspian, about what kind of follow-up questions do students have when they're searching stuff, because we can't get that from the
Yeah.
online piece, but what next step questions do people tend to ask after they've gotten the basics?
Absolutely. And I will say the most common next step question I get is, can I go there? Especially, I think, because a lot of folks, English is not a language they're as comfortable with.
Hmm.
To call a program or navigate a website can be
Yeah.
intimidating. So they're like, can I go there now? I want to go there right now. So
Oh,
putting your
that's
hours,
interesting. They would
yes,
rather just go and kind of ask their
in
questions than
person.
even call. I get that. I don't like to
Yes.
call places.
Yeah. So if you have, listed in your description when, the office is open and folks can just walk in, that's super helpful to me because a lot of folks would prefer that than calling or filling out an online form if that's something your
Oh,
program
that is
offers.
good. That's good information. I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah.
Um, Ruth just had a nice little tip too in the chat. She said if in SID, if one of their classes is closed, I think you mean if it's full, right? You're not accepting more students into the class. Um, or maybe even if it's closed because it's one of those classes where you can't really register for it after the first week, you will put that in the name of the class. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
So in the class name, it might say ELL3 closed, and then Caspian and any person who's searching will know that, okay, they've got these classes, but some of them do appear to be full. That's good.
I
That's
love
a nice
that.
tip.
Thank you for
Okay,
doing that.
good to
That
know.
is so helpful. Yes, thank you.
That's good. I love it. Awesome. Learned some new things today. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. If there's any last questions, I'll be here for another, minute or two. Next session starts at 1. That's right. Thank you, Astrid, for that reminder because it's like lunch break time.
It is lunch
Um,
break.
yeah, love it.